The 2006 NASCAR Nextel Cup Series season was an unforgettable season. Denny Hamlin being one of the best rookies, Mark Martin's first retirement, the exciting Las Vegas finish, Kasey Kahne finally coming of age, the infamous Brian Vickers incident, Kenseth v. Gordon. But no matter what, the chase would paint a different picture, and the results may surprise you. And this year, Jimmie Johnson would claim his first championship, but how would the season play out without the chase? So without further ado, let's break the chase. In the first 6 races, we would have 5 different winners, with Jimmie Johnson winning the Daytona 500 and 2 weeks later at the thrilling finish at Las Vegas. Matt Kenseth would take race 2 at California, with Kasey Kahne winning the 4th race at Atlanta. Race 5 at Bristol would be taken by Kurt Busch, and the next week at Martinsville being won by defending champion Tony Stewart. For the second season in a row, Jimmie Johnson would lead the points after 6 races, although this season he would not have as big of an advantage. This season he would only have a 59-point lead over a retiring Mark Martin, and the top 8 would be within 1 race of each other. Kasey Kahne would win another 2 races at Texas and then again 5 weeks later at the Coca-Cola 600, but would end up losing points at the top by having 3 finishes outside the top 20. Kevin Harvick would win the 8th race at Phoenix and climb up to 9th in the standings. Jimmie Johnson would win at Talladega and would grow his lead to 109 points by being very consistent. Dale Jr. would win at Richmond but would lose points to the top by not being as consistent as Jimmie Johnson. Greg Biffle would win the race at Darlington to climb up 5 places into 13th. After 12 races, only one other driver would be able to stay in range, and that would be Matt Kenseth, only being back by 109 points. Kenseth in this time frame would record 4 top 5 finishes, and if not for his 38th at Richmond, he might have taken the lead from Jimmie Johnson. At Dover, Kenseth would win, with Johnson finishing 6th to shrink the gap to 74 points. At Pocono, Kenseth would come home 5th, while Johnson would finish 10th to shrink the gap again to 48 points. At Michigan, Jimmie Johnson would finish 6th, while Kenseth would come home 13th to extend the gap to 74 points. At Sonoma, Johnson would finish 10th, while Kenseth would come home 17th and would set him back to 101 points. At Daytona, Johnson would have a disastrous day and finish 32nd, while Kenseth had a solid race to finish 5th and bring the gap down to just 8 points. At Chicagoland, Kenseth would be in the running late, but Kenseth's past errors would come back to bite him.
Oh! Kenseth goes around off the front end of Gordon. And automatically you think of what happened at Bristol between the 17 and the 24 that resulted in that shoving incident on pit road after the race.
I'd take a look at that again. I think that Kenseth probably got a little bit loose going in there because
Kenseth would be spun out by Jeff Gordon, relegating him to a 22nd place finish, while Johnson had a solid day to finish 6th and grow the gap to 51 points at the halfway point of the season. Over the next 6 races, it would seem as if Kenseth's title hopes were starting to slip away. Johnson would go on to finish 9th at Loudon, while Kenseth would finish 14th, growing the gap to 68 points. At Pocono, Kenseth would finish 14th again, but Johnson would finish 6th to grow the gap to 97 points. At the Brickyard 400 in Indy, Johnson would win, while Kenseth finished 2nd to grow the gap to 107 points. The next week at Watkins Glen, neither would have a great run, but Johnson would still outperform Kenseth by finishing 17th, while Kenseth finished 21st, growing the gap to 124 points. At this point, all hope seemed lost, but Matt Kenseth would have a rebound.
Standings right now just 58 points behind Jimmie Johnson. Matt started working on cars when he was 13 along with his dad. Started racing at 16. He already has one Nextel Cup championship, trying to get another, trying to make the chase for the championship. Matt Kenseth wins at Michigan.
Good job, guys. I thought I was going to blow it again. I was getting so tight. Good job.
Last lap at Bristol.
Wow, that was a good move on Scott Rick's part. Did a really good job there. Here he goes.
Matt Kenseth wins the Sharping 500.
Might have held on for that spot. Computer says he did anyway.
Kenseth would win back-to-back races at Michigan and Bristol, while Johnson would finish 13th at Michigan and 10th at Bristol, and now the gap was only 7 points, the closest it had been all season long, and with 12 races to go, the championship fight would heat up. At California, Kenseth would take the point lead by 9 points with a 7th place finish, while Johnson would finish 11th. At Richmond, Jimmy would not have a good day, going a lap down and finishing 23rd, while Kenseth would go on to finish 8th and grow his advantage to 57 points. At Loudon, Jimmy Johnson would have a disastrous day, finishing 39th, 67 laps down, while Kenseth would finish 10th, making the gap 150 points. Matt Kenseth for the 6th race in a row would outperform Johnson by finishing 10th, while Johnson would finish 13th, increasing the gap to 170 points. Kansas would seem like a turning point, with Johnson being in contention all day and leading the most laps, both the craziness of the race falling to fuel mileage, with Johnson running out of gas and finishing 14th, while Kenseth would only finish 23rd, shrinking the gap to 133 points. This would not be as many points as Johnson had hoped for. At Talladega, coming down to the last lap, Johnson would seem in position to win and gain points on Kenseth. Even if he finished 2nd, Kenseth was back in 6th, and if they stayed, the gap would have only been 108 points. But Johnson's own teammate Brian Vickers would cause this famous incident.
Getting a little wider.
There he goes.
Junior.
Oh, no! There's the 25. The 48. It takes out Earnhardt and Jimmy Johnson.
Yep. Brian Vickers, Jimmy Johnson's own teammate, would wreck him and Dale Jr. on the last lap, and instead of gaining a few points, he would lose a chunk of points. Kenseth would go on to finish 4th, while Johnson was relegated to a 24th place finish, and now being 202 points back. Johnson would need a miracle to come back and win the title. He would have to gain an average of 34 points per race if he was to win the championship. Johnson's miracle would fire off to a good start. At Charlotte, Jimmy Johnson would finish 2nd, while Matt Kenseth would finish 14th, shrinking the gap to 153 points. At Martinsville, Johnson would dominate and win, while Matt Kenseth finished 11th, decreasing the gap to 93 points. At Atlanta, both would have a good run, with Johnson finishing 2nd and Kenseth finishing 4th, slightly bringing the gap down to 78 points with 3 races to go. At Texas, Johnson would come home 2nd once again, beating Kenseth, who finished 12th, and brought the gap down to just 35 points. At the penultimate race in Phoenix, Johnson would take the point lead with a 2nd place finish, while Kenseth finished 11th. The championship contenders were only separated by 11 points, with Johnson leading. This is the closest battle for the title NASCAR had ever seen up to that point. This would truly be a battle for the ages. Kenseth was going for his 2nd championship, and Johnson still going for his maiden title. Two drivers who both at some point it seemed impossible for them to win, but would both have a surge to get them back in contention. But unfortunately, one will be champion and one would not, and now it was time to decide. Jimmy Johnson would qualify in 15th and Kenseth in 19th. On lap 10, Kenseth would pit from the 15th position, falling to 18th, and Johnson would follow by pitting in the next caution period on lap 16 from 9th place. But because of debris hitting his grill, he would fall to 40th due to repairs, but there was still a long way to go. Johnson would make some very aggressive moves to move himself through the field and would be back in the top 10 on lap 78 while Kenseth was running in the top 5. Johnson would surge all the way to 8th when green flag pit stops would start on lap 104. Johnson would stay out long enough to lead a lap to gain 5 extra bonus points, and Kenseth would not. Keep this in mind because this will prove crucial at the end. When pit stops cycled out, Kenseth was in 6th and Johnson was in 8th. On lap 117, Kyle Busch would bring out a caution and both would pit. Kenseth would come down and take 2 tires while Johnson would take 4, but on Johnson's stop, they would have quite the scare.
Before he left, I want to check it and we'll also check the video, but something happened on the left front just before he left the pit stall.
Okay, let's take a look here, Alan.
Oh, that's so heads up. So heads up on Chad's part.
Lug nut.
Yep. Only had 4 tight and they won all.
A heads-up move by the front tire changer may have saved Johnson's season. So at the time, if you didn't have all 5 lug nuts on the wheel, you would get a penalty and drop to the tail end. Even though this cost him a few spots, this move may have saved his season. So the race would get back going on lap 120 with Kenseth in 5th and Johnson back in 16th. Caution would come out again on lap 162 and both would come back to pit road. Kenseth from 8th and Johnson from 10th. Kenseth's pit crew would be on point, leaping him to 5th and Johnson moving up 1 spot to 9th. The race would get back going on lap 166. Johnson would catch Matt Kenseth on lap 181 and battle him for the 5th spot for 4 laps, but Johnson would not get around him. Instead, Clint Bowyer would pass Johnson and would fall to 7th with 82 laps to go. But on lap 190, Jimmy Johnson would almost be caught up in a wreck.
Into the wall right in front of Jimmy Johnson.
We see him right in the middle of the screen, gets loose and goes around, and Jimmy Johnson gets by. Menard in the 15 barely gets by.
Robbie Gordon would spin out right in front of him, but luckily for Johnson, he would not be collected. Due to the caution, both would come down pit road again, but both would lose spots. Kenseth going down to 7th and Johnson to 8th, right by each other. But due to some drivers staying out, they would line up 12th and 13th for the restart. Johnson would not have such a great restart, losing 2 positions and Kenseth staying put. On lap 206, another caution would come out due to Mike Bliss dropping oil on the track. Both drivers would come down pit road, but this stop was very important because this could be the last stop due to the drivers now having enough fuel to get to the end. Both drivers would pit for 2 tires. Kenseth would come out 3rd and Johnson in 9th with 58 laps to go. Kenseth would quickly fall to 4th due to his own teammate Greg Biffle passing him 2 laps after the restart. Then another 2 laps later, he would lose another spot to Denny Hamlin and was now in 5th with Johnson running in 10th. The race would go on and everything would string out to Kenseth running 5th and Johnson running in 8th. If the race stayed green to the end and the positions remained, Jimmy Johnson would be the champion by just 3 points over Kenseth. And with Kenseth under immense pressure for 5th by Martin Truex Jr. and Kevin Harvick, it would seem as if Johnson had the championship in hand. But another caution would come out.
Because they hit the wall, and now we've got more trouble, Bill.
Ryan Newman is around on the backstretch. Caution is out, 21 to go.
Just cut the grass.
To the left rear tire has come apart on the 12 car.
Hey, Alan.
Yes, sir?
What were you saying about having to make decisions?
Yeah, now, they'll all pit because of the speed fall off on tires here, but what do? You know there's going to be some people that take just 2 tires here. There may be some people that don't stop at all. How far back do you take a chance on putting that 48 car now?
Ryan Newman would spin with 21 laps to go and shake up everything. Every driver would come down pit road and both pit crews would be on point, with Kenseth moving up to 4th and Johnson to 5th, once again right next to each other. The race would restart with 16 laps to go and another caution would come out on the same lap. Juan Pablo Montoya would crash and eventually bring out the red flag. The race would restart with 11 laps to go, with Kenseth running in 5th and Johnson in 6th. Kenseth would have a smooth restart, retaining his position, while Johnson would spin the tires and lose a place to go down to 7th. A couple laps later, Kenseth would also lose a place, going down to 6th, while Johnson lost yet another place to go down to 8th. But the caution would come out again due to Casey Mears dropping oil on the track. This would set up a green-white checkered for the championship. Kenseth 6th, Johnson 7th, and 2 laps to decide it all. Kenseth would have a good restart and retain his position, while Jimmy Johnson would lose a spot to Scott Riggs and then another to Carl Edwards. If he lost another spot or if Kenseth passed another car, Johnson would lose the title. Kenseth would be challenged by Scott Riggs, but would not be passed by him, but Jimmy Johnson would have a big challenge from Clint Bowyer. Bowyer and Johnson would have a drag race to the finish line, and Johnson by a bumper would beat Clint Bowyer to the line and clinch his first NASCAR Nextel Cup championship. Jimmy Johnson either way would claim his first championship in 2006, but in this timeline would do it in much more dramatic fashion. Now either way, Johnson would win the title, but the narrative of how he won it would have been much different. Now remember how I told you the significance of Johnson leading those 2 lone laps and Kenseth leading none? If Johnson had not led those laps, he would not have those 5 extra bonus points and would hand the title to Matt Kenseth by 1 point. That is how close this season could have been. Jimmy Johnson would make his 5th attempt at a title fight and finally get it. In 2002, he would become the first rookie to lead the points, but would have a disastrous last 7 races to fall out of contention for the title in just his rookie season, and would end up finishing 5th. In 2003, he would have a late season rebound, but it would just be too little too late to catch Matt Kenseth, and he would have to settle for 2nd. In 2004, had another late season rebound to put himself in contention, but would fall just short to teammate Jeff Gordon by 47 points. In 2005, had his season completely fall apart a little over halfway through while leading the standings, and would have to settle for 3rd. But the 5th time would be the charm, and he would finally put an entire season together in 2006 to win the championship. Thank you guys once again for watching, and I will catch you next week for 2007.